Vila woke up with a strange heaviness in her chest. Her small room inside the space station dorm was quiet. Filled with the soft hum of power lines and machines, she sat up slowly on her bed, rubbing her eyes, and then froze. Something felt different, very different. She looked down and gasped. Her shirt was tight, stretched in a way it had never been before. She stood up quickly and ran to the mirror, her long alien ears twitching with panic. There, in the glass, she saw herself, her coconuts, as the humans jokingly called them, had grown overnight. Not just a little, but a lot. They were round, full, and heavy, making her small body look unbalanced. Her cheeks turned dark purple, the alien version of a blush. "This can't be," she whispered. Hugging herself tightly, she had heard stories. Old legends from her people, when a girl's coconuts grew overnight. It meant something ancient. It meant she had entered adulthood. She had become ready in the eyes of her species, but Vela wasn't ready. She was only 19 cycles. Old, just learning about Earth culture, and still scared of crowds. Now her body had changed without warning. And worst of all, she didn't know how to hide it. Her usual clothes didn't fit anymore. She tried squeezing into her soft blue uniform, but the top button wouldn't close. She grabbed her cloak and wrapped it around herself, keeping her head low. Then she slowly walked out of her room into the main hall of the station, hoping no one would notice. The space station was shared by many races: humans, Threxians, Zalari, and her own kind. The Valari, everyone was busy, walking fast, carrying tools, checking data tablets. But today, the moment Vila stepped into the hallway, heads turned, whispers began. Some of the younger aliens started pointing, nudging each other. A group of humans looked confused. Then one of them raised his eyebrows. She heard someone laugh behind her back, and her shoulders tensed. She hurried forward, her eyes fixed on the ground. But then, a voice called out, gentle and calm, "Vila." She looked up and saw him, Jake, the human engineer who worked on power systems. He was tall, kind-faced, and always quiet. He often fixed the lights in the dorms or brought food when someone was sick. Vela had spoken to him only a few times, but he always smiled softly at her, never mocking her strange alien habits. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, walking closer. She shook her head quickly and backed away. "No, don't look, please," she said, her voice trembling. Jake stopped. Confused but respectful. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stare," he said, holding up his hands. Vila turned and ran, cloak flying behind her. She found an empty storage room, went inside, and shut the door. She sat on the cold floor, heart racing. She hated this. She didn't want attention. She didn't ask for this body change. She just wanted to study, learn, and explore the galaxy, not be stared at like she was some kind of prize. There was a soft knock on the door. "Vila, it's me, Jake," came the voice again. "I have a jacket. Maybe it'll help." She hesitated, then opened the door a little. Jake was holding out a dark, oversized hoodie. "No one will see anything if you wear this," he said, smiling gently. Vila slowly took it, her fingers brushing his for a second. Her face turned even darker purple. "Thank you," she whispered. Jake nodded and stepped back. "I'll be outside, just in case anyone bothers you again," he said. Vela closed the door and put on the hoodie. It was warm, and the long sleeves covered her hands. She looked in the mirror again. Her coconuts were still there, big and obvious, but now, at least, she felt a little safer as she sat quietly. In the storage room, her mind raced. Why did this happen so fast? Was there something wrong with her? And why did Jake care so much? He wasn't like the others. He didn't laugh or point. He looked worried, like he actually wanted to protect her. She hugged her knees and rested her chin on them. For now, all she could do was stay hidden. But something told her this was just the beginning. This change in her body. It was going to change her life outside the door. Jake stood guard, arms crossed, and deep down, even he didn't know why he felt so protective of this small alien girl with giant eyes and now, giant problems. Vela stepped out of the storage room slowly, still wearing Jake's large black hoodie. It hung past her knees and covered everything, but still, she walked like a shadow. Keeping to the edges of the hallway, even with the cloak and hoodie, she felt eyes crawling all over her. The whispers had started again. Little sounds like buzzing insects. She looks different. Did you see her? Overnight. That's impossible. Vela clenched her fists and kept walking. She wanted to disappear, to sink into the walls and vanish. Her species, the Valari, rarely had this kind of change without preparation. It only happened during something called the first bloom, a natural phase, but only if the body was completely ready. But Vela wasn't ready, not mentally, not emotionally. Now she was suddenly the center of attention, and she hated it. She turned a corner and bumped into someone. It was a Zellery male with 4 arms and glowing green eyes. He looked down at her chest area, then smirked. "Looks like someone's blooming," he said in a teasing voice. Vela stepped back in fear. But before the male could say more, a strong voice interrupted. "Walk away." It was Jake, standing just behind her, his jaw clenched. The Zellery rolled his eyes and walked off, muttering something in his own language. Jake turned to Vela and offered his hand. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded quickly, even though her hands were shaking. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," she whispered. "You didn't?" Jake said softly. "They're the ones acting like idiots." He walked beside her as they headed toward the dining area. Vela noticed that everyone still looked, still whispered. But when they saw Jake walking close, some of them looked away, others raised eyebrows. Surprised, even annoyed, one Threxian female stared with narrowed eyes. "I thought humans didn't bond with Valari," she hissed, as they passed. Jake didn't reply, but Vela felt her heart drop. She didn't want Jake to get in trouble just because he helped her. They sat at a corner table. Far from the others, Vela barely touched her food, her appetite gone. Jake handed her a glass of water. "Want to talk about it?" he asked. She looked up slowly. "There's something you should know," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "In my culture, when a girl's coconuts grow overnight, it's a sign. A sign of what?" Jake asked, genuinely curious. "It means her body has chosen," Vela said, eyes wide with fear. "Chosen to be ready for bonding, for partnership, for other things." Jake blinked, then leaned back in his chair. "You mean like mating?" he asked carefully. Vela nodded quickly, face turning dark purple again. Jake ran a hand through his hair. "That's intense," he said. "I didn't choose this," Vela said quickly. "It just happened. I wasn't trying to attract anyone. I just wanted to study and live a quiet life." Jake looked at her for a long moment, then said, "I know you didn't choose it, and I believe you." She looked down, grateful. "You're the only one who hasn't laughed," she said softly. "Maybe because I've been laughed at too." Jake said with a small smile, "We outcasts have to stick together." Vela gave the smallest smile, just for a second. Suddenly, the station alert lights blinked. A message popped up on the wall screen. "Station Festival in 2 days, all species, welcome." Jake read it and groaned. Oh great, more crowd, more noise, more people staring. Vela didn't speak. She had never attended a festival before, and now, with her new appearance, the idea scared her even more. "Don't worry," Jake said. Noticing her silence, "You don't have to go if you don't want to." Vela shook her head slowly. "I have to," she said, surprising even herself. "If I hide forever, they win, right?" Jake looked at her with pride. "Then we'll go together," he said. Vila's heart jumped at the word together. Not in a romantic way, but in a safe way. A shielded way. She finished her water and stood up. But as they walked out of the dining area, another alien bigger, stronger watched them leave. His eyes narrowed, and a grin stretched across his face. Jake noticed, and gently moved Vela to the other side of him. "You're not alone anymore," he said, and Vela believed him. But she didn't know that the attention would only grow stronger, that some aliens wouldn't take no for an answer, and that soon. One of them would try to claim her. 2 days had passed since Vila's transformation. But the whispers hadn't stopped, they had only grown louder. Now it wasn't just strange looks in the hallway or giggles behind her back. It was open interest, bold stares, and offers she didn't understand. Vila sat in the quiet corner of the science wing, pretending to read a datapad. Her fingers were shaking slightly as she scrolled through the same paragraph for the 10th time. She could feel them, eyes everywhere. The alien males had started circling, not just from her own Volari race, but from others too tall. Wide-shouldered, clawed, scaled, even tentacled, they approached her with strange gifts, rare crystals, glowing fruits, and even soft feathers from far planets. Each gift was a message. Each one meant the same thing in different languages. "Choose me." One Zalari offered her a box of sweet air seeds, rare and expensive. Another Threxian male offered a bracelet made of burning glass. A third, from a species Vila couldn't even name, stood at her doorway all night, humming a low mating tune. She didn't want any of it. She didn't know how to make it stop. She stayed in her room longer now, only stepping out when necessary. And every time she did, at least one male followed behind her silently. It felt like she was being hunted, but no one had touched her. Yet, one afternoon, Jake returned from a long shift repairing the hydrocore systems. He walked past the dorms and saw Vila sitting on the floor outside her room, her cloak tightly wrapped around her. She looked like she was holding back tears. He sat beside her. Without saying anything, after a long silence, she spoke. "I didn't leave because I was tired," she said. "I left because they wouldn't stop following me." Jake frowned. "Who?" "All of them," she whispered. "They think I'm available because of my body. They think it's okay to surround me, offer me things, look at me like I'm not a person." Jake clenched his fists. "This isn't okay," he said. "They're pushing you, trying to claim something that isn't theirs." "I told them no," she said. "But in their cultures, that only means try harder." Jake stood up. "Where are they now?" Vila looked up at him, worried. "You can't fight all of them," she said. "There are too many, and they'll say I invited it just by walking outside." Jake didn't care. He went straight to the command hall and filed a formal complaint. But the station leader, an old insectoid named Grax, waved him off. "She's Volari," Grax said. "That means she's come of age. This is natural. Nothing illegal has happened." Jake's voice got sharp. "She said no. That should be enough." Grax leaned back. "Humans are too soft," he muttered. "If she wants protection, she should bond." That's how things are done. Jake returned to the dorms with fire in his chest. He knew the rules of the station weren't made for humans. They weren't made for kindness either. They were made for power, tradition, and control. He found Vela sitting alone again, this time staring out the glass window at the stars. "I tried the official way," he said. "They won't help." She didn't seem surprised. "I know," she whispered. "I've always known." Jake sat beside her and looked at her carefully. "You don't want to bond with anyone," he said. She nodded. "But if you had to choose someone to keep them, a way to make it stop, would you trust me?" Vela turned slowly, her large, glowing eyes filled with a mix of fear and hope. "Would it be real?" she asked. Jake shook his head. "Not unless you want it to be," he said. "But it would be enough to make them back off before she could answer." A loud shout echoed through the hallway. Vela flinched. They both looked up to see a massive alien male Zorvok. A broad-shouldered brute with horns standing nearby. She's been ignoring everyone. Zorvak growled. Maybe she needs someone stronger to convince her. He stepped forward, reaching for her arm. Before his fingers could touch her, Jake was already moving. He grabbed Zorvak's wrist and shoved him back. She said no. Jake snapped. Zorvak growled and raised a fist. But Jake didn't wait. He punched first, a clean hit across Zorvak's jaw, sending him stumbling back. Gasps filled the hallway. Aliens rushed over, a siren started blaring, and station security came running. Jake stood there, breathing hard. Vela stood behind him, wide-eyed and shaking. "Take him," one of the guards said, grabbing Jake. Vela stepped forward quickly. "No, please, he was protecting me," she said. But the law was clear. Violence between species without permission meant punishment. Jake was dragged away, and Vela was left behind. She sank to her knees, feeling cold and helpless again. Jake had done what no one else dared, and now? He might be exiled, but Vela wasn't going to stay silent anymore. The station court was not a real courtroom. It was a cold metal chamber near the center of the outpost. The walls were lined with old lights that flickered too much. 3 judges from different species sat on raised seats. Looking down without emotion, Jake stood in the middle, hands cuffed, a bruise on his cheek. He didn't regret what he had done, not even for a second. But now, everyone was watching him. Like he was the threat, not Zorvak. Vela sat in the front row, surrounded by strangers. Her cloak wrapped tightly around her body, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to run in there and pull Jake away, but she knew that would only make things worse. The lead judge, a massive tentacled elder, spoke first. "Human Jake, you are charged with violence against a fellow resident of this station, Zorvak." Of the Varn clan, Jake lifted his head. He tried to touch her. He said calmly, "She didn't want it. I warned him." "You have no right to strike without permission or bond," the judge said coldly. "You could have reported it." "I did," Jake replied. "They ignored me." The room grew quiet. Even Zorvak, sitting with an ice pack against his jaw, didn't speak. He was too proud to admit he had been beaten by a human. The second judge leaned forward. "There are cultural rules, human, and you broke them. You are not bonded to the girl. Yet you act like you own her." "I don't own anyone," Jake said sharply. "I protected her because no one else would." Vela stood up suddenly, her voice shaking. "He doesn't own me," she said loudly. "But I want him to protect me." All eyes turned toward her. She felt her legs wobble, but she didn't sit back down. Her voice rose again, this time louder. "In my culture, a protector can be named, even if no bond is formed. It's part of the old ways." From before the stars, the room stirred. Whispers spreading fast. The judges looked at each other. Unsure, one of them finally asked, "Are you invoking ancient Valari rites?" Vela took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, I am," she said. "I named Jake as my protector." Jake stared at her in shock. He had no idea what this meant. Vela turned toward him, her eyes wide but firm. "It means they can't touch me anymore," she said softly, "and they can't punish you, not if I choose you." The lead judge looked annoyed. "These rights are outdated," he said. "But still legal," the second judge replied, glancing through an old digital scroll. A long silence followed. Then, finally, the third judge gave a slight nod. "Very well," he said. "Charges dropped. Bond accepted. You are free to go for." Now, Jake's cuffs were removed. He rubbed his wrists and walked toward Vela. "Are you sure about this?" he whispered. "I didn't mean for you to do something so permanent." Vela smiled nervously. "It's not permanent," she said, "unless you want it to be." Jake nodded slowly. "All right then, I'll keep you safe, as they walked out together. The station buzzed with new whispers. Some called it scandal, some called it bravery, others jealousy. Zorvac glared from his seat, rubbing his jaw. But he didn't move. Not now. Not with the protector mark in place. That night, Jake and Vila were assigned a new living space shared quarters. As per the protector right, the room was simple. With 2 beds on opposite sides and 1 shared table, Jake stood awkwardly by the door, unsure of what to say. "You don't have to stay," Vela said quietly. Jake shook his head. "I said I'd protect you, didn't I?" She gave a shy nod, her fingers playing with the edge of her cloak. The silence between them was heavy but not uncomfortable. It was full of new thoughts, questions neither of them could yet ask. Jake placed a blanket on his bed and stretched. Out Vela sat on hers, staring at the stars through the small window. After a long pause, she spoke again. "Do you think I did the right thing?" Jake turned his head toward her. "You did what you had to do," he said, "and you did it bravely." She smiled softly, her eyes reflecting the starlight. And for the first time in days, she felt like she could breathe again, not because the attention was gone but because she was no longer alone in facing it. Days passed since Jake and Vela moved into the shared quarters. Life on the station didn't slow down, but something inside their room had changed. At first, they stayed on their own sides, speaking only when needed. But slowly, the silence turned into conversations. Small at first, then longer and deeper. Jake fixed her broken communicator. Vila taught him how to make Glora tea from her home planet. They laughed quietly, sometimes even forgot why they were together in the first place. But the outside world didn't forget. Everywhere they went, eyes still followed. Some stared with curiosity, some with disapproval, and a few with anger. Zorvac hadn't tried anything again. But his gaze still followed Vila like a shadow in the dark. Jake stayed close, always keeping one step between her and the rest of the station. Even when Vila said she was fine, he didn't take chances. One morning, the station broadcast announced a new council meeting. It was routine updates on supplies, fuel levels, patrol reports. But this time, a special motion had been added. New rules for cross-species bonding. Jake and Vila heard it together while eating breakfast in their shared room. The spoon in Vila's hand stopped halfway to her mouth. Jake's jaw tightened. "There? Changing the rules because of us," he said. Vila nodded slowly. "Some don't like a human protecting a Volari girl." Jake stood and paced the room. "So, what do we do?" Vila looked up at him, her face serious. If they removed the old right, then the protection bond could be broken. Jake stopped walking. "That would mean that anyone could approach me again," she whispered, "and you wouldn't be allowed to stop them." A heavy silence filled the room. Jake sat back down and stared at the table. He didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, Vela spoke, her voice soft but steady. "There's one way to protect the bond," Jake looked at her. "What is it?" "We make it real," she said. Jake blinked. "You mean, officially bond?" Vela nodded slowly. "In my culture, a heart bond is permanent. Even stronger than protector status. It can't be challenged, not by rules, not by councils." Jake leaned back, staring at the ceiling. 100 thoughts ran through his head. It wasn't that he didn't care. He did more than he wanted to admit. But was it right? He didn't want to force anything, not fake it, not trap her in something too serious. "I don't want you to feel forced," Jake said finally. Vela smiled gently. "I don't," she whispered. "I just want to be safe. And I trust you." Jake looked into her eyes. There was something in them, fear. Yes, but also warmth. She wasn't asking for romance. Not yet. She was asking for protection, for safety, for choice. He reached across the table and gently placed his hand over hers. "If this bond means you get to keep your freedom, then I'll do it." Vila's breath caught. She gave a small nod. Then we'll go before the council tonight. Later that evening, the council hall was full. More species had gathered than usual. Some came for news, others came for drama. When Vila and Jake stepped onto the center platform, a wave of murmurs rose through the crowd. Zorvac stood at the back, arms crossed, watching closely. The lead judge raised his hand. "State your business." Vila stepped forward. Her voice clear and steady. "We come to confirm our heart bond. Under Valari tradition and human law." The room buzzed. "Is this a trick?" Someone shouted, "She's just hiding behind a human," another muttered. Jake stepped up beside her. "No trick," he said. "I choose this too." The judges leaned toward each other, whispering in their languages. Then the lead judge asked, "Do you swear to protect and stand beside each other, even across worlds and time?" Vela looked at Jake. "I do," she said, her voice soft but strong. Jake looked at her with a smile that reached his eyes. "I do," he said. The judge tapped his staff to the ground. Bond accepted, permanent and recognized by station law. The crowd fell quiet, some in shock, some in quiet approval. Jake and Vela stepped down from the platform hand in hand, not because they had to, but because they wanted to, in that moment. Something had shifted between them. This wasn't just about safety anymore. It was about trust, loyalty, and something deeper, slowly blooming, back in their shared room. Vila took off her cloak for the first time in front of Jake, not because she had to, but because she felt safe. "You're not afraid anymore?" Jake asked softly. She smiled. "I still am," she said. "But now, not when you're near." The new bond changed everything and nothing. Life on the station moved on. Engines still roared, lights still flickered, and aliens still filled the halls, but for Vila and Jake, their little shared room now felt different. It wasn't just a place to sleep anymore. It was a place where two different lives were trying to understand each other. That night, Vela stood near the window, staring at the stars. She was wearing a soft silver robe now, no longer hiding her body under thick cloaks. Her coconuts were still there, still large, but somehow they didn't feel like a curse anymore, because now she was seen, not just looked at. Jake sat on his bed across the room, pretending to read a tech manual, but his eyes kept flicking up. Watching her reflection in the glass, he hadn't said much since they left the council hall. The bond was official now, permanent in the eyes of every species, yet they were still trying to figure out what that meant between just the two of them. "I used to look at those stars and wonder if I'd ever belong somewhere," Vela said quietly. Jake looked up. "And now?" he asked. She turned around slowly, her long hair glowing under the room light. "I think I'm getting closer," she whispered. Jake smiled. "You belong here, Vela," he said, "not because of the bond, but because of who you are." Vela walked to the center of the room and sat on the floor, crossing her legs. "I used to sleep in a tiny pod, just big enough for my body. No windows, no noise, just darkness," she said. "It was safe, but lonely." Jake set the manual aside and joined her on the floor. They sat together, shoulders nearly touching. "I never liked being alone either," Jake said. "Even in a crowd, sometimes I felt invisible." Vila tilted her head. "Funny," she said. "I feel like everyone sees me now, but no one sees me the way you do." Jake looked at her. "That's because I'm not just looking at your body, Vila," he said gently. "I'm seeing your strength, your courage. The way you speak up even when you're scared." Her cheeks turned that soft purple shade again. "Do you think we'll be okay?" she asked. Jake nodded. "I think we already are." Suddenly, a loud noise echoed outside the hallway, a clank, followed by yelling. Vila flinched and grabbed Jake's arm without thinking. He looked at the door, then at her. "It's just the night patrol." "Nothing dangerous," he said calmly. But Vela didn't let go of his arm. Her fingers stayed wrapped around him, warm and trembling. Jake didn't move. He let her hold on. "I have nightmares sometimes," she whispered, "about being taken, touched, forced." Jake's voice was soft. "I won't let that happen, not while I'm alive." Her breathing slowed, and she finally let go, but instead of going back to her bed, she sat on the edge of his, looking unsure. "Can I stay?" "Here tonight," she asked, voice barely a whisper. Just to feel safe." Jake nodded without hesitation. "You can always stay," he said. She climbed onto his bed carefully, lying down near the edge, keeping a respectful space between them. Jake lay beside her, fully clothed, arms crossed over his chest, staring. At the ceiling, the room was quiet, but their hearts were loud, beating fast, uncertain. It wasn't romance yet, not kisses, not promises, but it was something close, something precious. Vela turned on her side and faced him. "Thank you," she said softly, "for treating me like I'm more than what I look like." Jake turned his head and looked into her glowing eyes. "You are more, Vela," he whispered, "so much more." They didn't speak after that, just lay there in silence, the stars blinking outside their window like tiny candles. Vela slowly closed her eyes, feeling the safest she had felt in her entire life. No one could touch her now, not with Jake beside her. Jake didn't sleep right away. He watched her face relax, her breath steady and soft. She looked like someone who had finally found a place to rest, and somehow that made him feel peaceful too. For once, the awkward tension between human and alien, protector and partner, silence, and fear, it all melted away. There was only warmth and the first real night of comfort they had ever shared. The days after the bond ceremony passed quietly. Vela still drew glances, but now most of them looked away the moment Jake stepped into view. The station had accepted the heart bond, but acceptance didn't mean respect. Some smiled to their faces and whispered behind their backs. But Vela didn't hide anymore, not in her room, not behind a cloak, not behind fear. She walked through the halls with her chin high and her steps steady. Her coconut still bounced with every step, but now they didn't make her shrink. They made her stand taller. She wore clothes that fit her new body. Not because she wanted attention, but because she was done being ashamed when she passed Zorvac in the common wing. She looked him straight in the eyes and didn't flinch. He sneered, but didn't say a word, not with Jake nearby. Not with the entire station knowing what happened last time he tried something, but even with the safety of the bond, Vela felt something stir inside her, a question she had avoided for days. Was she still pretending? Or had something real taken root between her and Jake? She saw it in the little things, the way he brought her warm tea every morning, the way his eyes lit up when she laughed, the way he watched her, not like a protector, but like someone who truly saw her, and she started seeing him too. Not just as a shield, not just a wall between her and the world, but as a man. A human with kindness in his heart and strength in his silence. One evening, during the station's small music gathering, Jake played an old Earth melody on a digital string harp. He didn't tell anyone he knew, how he just picked it up, sat on the bench, and played. Vela sat at the edge of the room, surrounded by soft lights and drifting sounds. She watched him, her heart beating differently now. Not from fear, but from something warmer, deeper. When the music ended, she walked up to him and said only 3 words, "Walk with me." They left the lights and music behind, entering the quiet garden dome. Artificial stars glowed above them, and glowing blue plants shimmered along the paths. Vela stopped near a crystal tree and looked up. "I used to believe I would always be alone," she said, "that no one would understand me, that I was too strange, too small, too different." Jake stood beside her, quiet, listening. "But you didn't look at me like I was weird," she continued. You looked at me like I was someone worth standing beside. Jake smiled. Because you are, he said. Vila turned to face him fully. I chose you that day to protect me, she said. But now, I choose you for more. Jake's breath caught. His voice was soft. What do you mean? She reached out and touched his hand, fingers trembling slightly. I don't want to just be safe, she said. I want to be with someone who makes me feel seen, strong, and wanted. Jake took her hand gently. You are all of those things, Vela, he whispered. And I've wanted to tell you for days. Now this bond may have started to protect you. But I never felt like it was fake. Their eyes locked, and for the first time, there was no fear, no awkwardness, only truth. Vila leaned in slowly, and Jake met her halfway. Their foreheads touched, her people's way of sealing affection. Not with lips, not yet, but with closeness, breath to breath. The bond had started as a shield, but now it became a bridge between two species. Between two lonely hearts. Later that night, Vela returned to their room and placed a small pendant. On Jake's pillow, it was a Valari symbol, meaning chosen. It could only be given once in a lifetime, and now it belonged to him. When Jake found it, he didn't speak. He simply held it tightly and looked across the room at her. She nodded, smiling with soft purple cheeks. And he whispered, I choose you too. From that day on, Vila wasn't just known as the alien girl whose coconuts grew overnight. She became known as the girl who chose her future, her protector, her heart, and Jake. He was no longer just the human with a kind smile. He was her anchor in a storm of stairs, her warmth in a cold galaxy. Together, they didn't just survive the stairs, the whispers, the rules. They rewrote the story. A human and an alien girl, bound by choice, not tradition, by love, not fear.